Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I did a review on what I consider to be somewhat of a poor showing for TYT talking about the Trump thing. A lot of shows are doing this. MSNBC is one of them, CNN. Especially when these shows take on somewhat of a Democratic tint. They also take on the stink of the party when it's analyzing these things. I wasn't for Democrats, or I wasn't for Republicans attacking the Iran deal when Obama was working out that deal, because they were using it to score political points. I feel the same way about Democrats doing this with Trump. Here's the thing. Media, and like TYT did, often have these comical versions of these countries, as if these guys are cartoons, and these cartoons are taking certain actions as if those actions are somehow unpropagated by other forces. They act as if the way that other countries behave is not in the same way that we behave. So when Cenk Uygur is making this argument to Cal about Nerf bombs, that you can drop bombs on other countries and that for whatever reason those other countries should just be like, the United States is doing it, so it's okay. Completely missing what the response will be if the same thing happened here. Uygur tried to make the argument, he was bombing old planes. He was bombing old areas. There were Nerf bombs. They set off sprinkles when they hit the ground. If that happened here, if Russia dropped a bomb in a field in Florida, even if nobody was in that field in Florida, Cenk Uygur's head would have popped clean off of his head, and Anna would be screaming at the top of her lungs, Cenk, what are we going to do? Cenk, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Let's be honest. How we perceive those things, or how we would perceive it, is how other countries perceive it. Us, from the standpoint of North Korea, we have military exercises. The United States may have forgotten this. They have not. There have been a war in North Korea. Newsflash. 20%, maybe a fifth of the population in that war was killed. We destroyed any and everything that we could find. We dropped so many bombs, there was nothing else to bomb. We dropped more bombs on North Korea than the entire theater in Europe in the prior war. So put that in perspective on the amount of bombs and munitions that we dropped on that country, the number of people we killed in that country. I guarantee you, we may not know that. They do. They fully do. And they may have this kind of puppet dictatorship now, but at the time, they weren't. I mean, early on, it wasn't. This comical regime that they have in there now, that wasn't the case. And regardless of what the regime they have in there now, I'm making somewhat of a simplistic point. Any country that has a situation where there is military potential on their borders takes a certain cadence. From the standpoint of the North Korean government, if it was you, for the moment, pretend as if you were not on the moon and you were in their country and you were in the seat of power in that country. And in the seat of power in that country, you're looking out at the world and you see a hostile force that has killed a fifth of your population. And in killing a fifth of your population is clearly and still on your borders. And is having military exercises with South Korea pretending as if they're going to invade your country. Now, they're saying it's provocative. It is provocative. If you're the person who's sitting there with the United States pretending as if they're going to invade your country. If they're doing something that's provocative, which it is, and they're pretending that we're going to invade the country itself, you can imagine that the person who's sitting there in that position may feel some kind of way about that. And when those exercises have taken place for decades, you can imagine that the person sitting in power may feel some kind of way about that. You see them take down Gaddafi. You see them take down Iraq. You see them taking actions in Syria to take those actions down. The American public may not know that those things were not necessarily done for the best of reasons, that they were done for geopolitical influence. But you know that. Sitting in that government, you know that. You know Gaddafi gave up his weapons. You saw what the United States did when Gaddafi gave up his weapons. You saw them breaking those deals and treaties. You're looking there at the world and you're seeing that. Even if you're a brutal regime, even if you're a brutal dictator, what do you, as the brutal dictator, looking at that, think? The United States deals with brutal dictators all over the world. Obama himself, when the Arab Spring was taking place in Egypt, was not on the side of the spring. He was on the side of the order, because it allowed him to have somebody to interact with from the standpoint of the government that he knew, the devil that you know. We are friends with all sorts of dictators. If it was you and it was your perspective, DPKR said themselves that part of the reason that they developed those nuclear weapons is because they was concerned that the United States was going to try to change and take out their country. Not to mention, we didn't keep our deals up. When Clinton was in office, he didn't supply the reactors. He didn't essentially give them the energy. And so they went a different route. If we want to have any level of peace, and this is somewhat of an absolute around the world, there's no justice without peace. Or you can make it the other way around, no peace without justice. You're not going to have a situation where you get everything and the other people get nothing. That's not going to take place. That's not fairness in any measure of the word. Ultimately, this idea that there is give and take is not a bad thing. If part of the give is, let's stop having military exercises because it over the top antagonizes the other country. And if the other country feel they're being antagonized, as a newsflash, in this case, they are. They are. Let's be honest. You're pretending as if you're invading that country. I'd imagine people take issue with it. I'm making a pitch to say, well, let's look at things from the perspective of the other party in this case. And oftentimes we don't have a tendency of doing that. If you really want something to take place and you want to give peace a chance, sometimes we mistaken strength as being always good, not missing the fact that sometimes the very act of you being strong entices other people to behave in the same way, and that any level of peace means some level of compromise in the way you go about your affairs. It is possible that the reason we've been at a stalemate for all of these years is because nobody has been willing to take the steps to end it in a real way. Bringing those troops home and stopping those military exercises is real, tangible things to try to create a peace process. And it's something different that we haven't tried before. I'm for it. If that stops them from firing off missiles, if that stops hostilities from the standpoint of them denuclearizing, I'm for it. I understand that the details and everything else needs to be worked out, but it's a start, and it's a start that should be nurtured, not necessarily attacked just because it's Donald Trump that's the person who's put it forward. No justice, no peace. We need to try something different. I'm on board for this. So I may have all sorts of issues with Trump. I don't particularly like the guy under 99% or 98% of the cases. I'm for this. Bring our troops home. Stop dicking around in these other countries. It's time to do something different. It's time to give peace a chance. And what I would say, though, live up to your agreements. And I mean that for us, also for them. Live up to your agreements. But we should also acknowledge that countries live up to their agreements when it is in the mutual interest of those countries. And no country is going to live up to an agreement if that country is going to be hurt by that agreement. It is never going to be all us and none of them. It is always, if we're being fair about this and we're taking their concerns, which you have to take other people's concerns into account if you want to really get anything done, then the steps that they're taking, halting the military exercises, is a good one. Bringing our troops home is a good one. I support it. So I'm not going to keep this one long, but I do believe in giving credit where credit is due. Donald Trump is horrible On environmental issues, Donald Trump is ghastly. On immigration issues, Donald Trump acted like a goddamn fool when he was talking to Trudeau. Donald Trump is being obnoxious when he's pulling out of the Iran deal. He is grossly obnoxious pulling out of the climate deal, as tepid as that was. He is obnoxious on 1,000 different fronts. He may be guilty of the emollients clause. There are a slew of issues that he is horrific on. But on this, he is literally taking a more left-wing position and going about and pulling the troops out and stopping the military exercises than his predecessors. Am I really going to not support a left-wing position on North Korea? I mean, again, this is all dependent upon whether or not we keep our agreements and whether they keep their agreements. And this is all dependent upon the details. Fair enough. And this may fall apart when the details started to be fleshed out. Fair enough. But what's on the table is positive. And I'm going to give him credit for it. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that. It's just, in my head, when I think about issues like this, I think of two things. Robert McNamara. And maybe one thing, more Robert McNamara. The conversation that he's had talking about Vietnam, where he gets the opportunity to meet, it was Ho Chi Minh, but he gets the opportunity to meet his adversary in the war, essentially the person who's prosecuting the war during Vietnam. I think it was Ho Chi Minh. And they nearly come to blows because McNamara is making a point to him, you got millions of your people killed. And he's making the point to McNamara, you tried to be a colonizing force and tried to invade and occupy our country, and we weren't going to have it. You were taking it over from the French. And McNamara is like, what the hell is wrong with you? That's not what we were trying to do at all. And what McNamara understood is that the people who you're interacting with have a disposition. They have a history. They have a way of looking at the world that you must, to some degree, understand if you're ever going to have some level of parity to engage with them in an honest and fair way. In fact is, if you don't engage with them in an honest and fair way, there will not be any peace in that situation, nor will there ever be to some resolution in that situation, because you're not being honest actors when you're engaging them. Part of that is understanding their disposition and their perspective when they're going about their affairs in the same way that you have a perspective and a disposition when you go about your affairs. You have to take it into account. The media takes a particular perspective that often doesn't take the other party, particularly nations, into account when it says and when it does things. You can have somebody like Lindsey Graham screaming about invading Iran, and the moment you have one odd, random, oddball cleric say anything about invading Israel or invading the United States, it's an uproar. Look at them, they're talking about invading America, they're saying death to America, look at them, they're animals, we need to do something about it, they're attacking us, they're talking about attacking us. All of these right-wing lunatics in this country that talk about bombing this country or that country. You have John Bolton talking about bombing or killing North Koreans and trying to implicate them in some kind of nuclear tri-way deal. All I'm trying to say is it is imperative, or it behooves us, to look at the world from the perspective of the other countries that are involved in these things. And media does not do that. And because media often doesn't do that, it gives you this jaded, one-sided perspective that everything that we're doing in the world is lovely and awesome, and our armor glistens in the sun, and we're the best on the fucking planet. And the other people are just doing things because the other people are just doing things, and they're just maniacs, and they're just bad guys. That's a cartoonish way of looking at the world. I don't care if Donald Trump is the person who brings some level of peace in that particular region of the world. I don't care if Donald Trump is gross and horrible in every other capacity, but in this particular case, he stumbled onto something that may de-escalate that region of the world. I don't care if Donald Trump is the avatar of this particular thing. He's not the person I voted for. I voted for Joe Stein, but I will support him on this very specific slice of a perspective. And I feel in an odd way, and I hate to be put in a position that almost need to. Because whether you stumble into it or not, it may de-escalate the region of the world or detentions. So I'll end it here. I'm not going to keep this one overly long. I just want to make this very basic point that in foreign policy, it's never going to be all us and none of them. There is a parity that needs to take place, where there needs to be an understanding and a recognition of the disposition of the other party if you're going to ever really get anything to be lasting and fair. I accept Chomsky's view of this. Nations lie. Nations keep treaties when those treaties are in the interest of those nations. So, if we're going to de-escalate tensions, good. If we're going to bring our troops home, good. If we're going to stop military exercises, good. If that means they stop firing off missiles, good. I want them to stop firing off missiles over the coast of Japan. If that means they denuclearize, I think that's insane to do. But, so, I'll leave it here. I'm not going to keep this one long. But Jamal, what about the parade? He wants to hold a parade. But Jamal, what about the parade? He wants to hold the parade. Yeah, the military parade is stupid. But look, Donald Trump is a salesman, and he's trying to sell what he's doing. Bringing up the cost of this is cartoonish. We spend $1 trillion on the military. That is a military parade, whether you want to see it or not. It has nothing to do with the parade. And I know what you mean, Gardner. You're joking Anna on this, and she should be joked on this. It had nothing to do with the cost of the parade. It has everything to do about it being a provocative action by one country pretending as if it's going to invade another country. That's a big fucking deal. So I will leave it at this. If you guys enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys. And where is there?